Yeah, there's definitely sound. Good, good, good. Okay. Right. Well, welcome again. Sorry if there was a brief cutout in the transmission there. Oh, that's going to be really loud. Got it. All right. So we are back. Right. So a couple of announcements. This weekend I'm having Lama Karma. Justin Wall is his proper name. I'm having him on to the podcast. He'll be guest number 2 on the podcast tomorrow. That'll be from 6 p.m. London time until either 9 o'clock or we run out of audience questions, one of the two. And Lama Karma, Justin Wall, has completed 2 3-year retreats, intensive retreats in the Kagyu and Nyingma traditions, I believe, and also completed a 6-month retreat in addition to his 2 3-year retreats. He is living currently as a layperson uh, with a partner and a daughter. So he's living a relatively conventional life in the real world, but has also completed extremely difficult practice, intensive practice, as a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner. And so, um, yeah, I'm excited to have him on because I think some of the questions and answers that might come from talking with Justin will be quite interesting. All right. So questions coming in, let's see. Uh right. So Sammy, I'm still working on that one. I have a very good idea of what I'd like to say. Welcome, Bluey. Very good idea of what I'd like to say, but I want to read a few more sources that are basically right up to 2020, at least 2020, so that I'm on top of whatever's happening now in the scholarship, because I haven't studied that subject in any great detail, certainly not in any great detail in uh I don't know, the last 10 years or so. So there may have been developments in the field since the last time I looked at this quite seriously. As a matter of fact, in the research that I've done in the last couple of months, thinking about what I'd like to say on the topic, I've found that there have been developments, and some of those are quite interesting. Like, there's been a there's been a really interesting there's a really interesting paper that was written about, based on the archaeology, what we can tell about Shakyans, so the Shakya clan. If we were looking at the Himalayas, actually, maybe I can pull that up if it's of interest, because why not? Okay, I have that pulled up somewhere under a tab group. Yes. Oh no, I don't. Or do I? Wisdom? No. Fuck yeah. Yeah, so there's this lovely. Oh yeah, here we are. So there's this lovely map that someone made. So let me share that screen with you, and then we'll be right back to the scheduled programming. But now that you have my brain running, you have to deal with the fact that you've got it running. Uh, okay, so let me see. Let's just get the right window. Yeah, yeah. Yes, we don't need that part of it. Just this part. Okay. And then I need my video back, please. Hmm. Where is my video? Is it behind? Is it hiding? Where did it go? That's interesting. Oh, oh, interesting. I know none of this is interesting to any of you, but fascinating. Okay. So let me transition over. Ta-da. Right. All right. So just real quick, while we're all thinking about it. So here we have um, 500 BC, right? So this is around the time of the Buddha, 500 BC. And if you look at the map, you have Shakya right here. So where are we? We're in the Himalayan mountains, right? So these are the Himalayas. So in the foothills to the Himalayas here, if I can, there we are. There's Shakya. So then when you read suttas and sutras, and it says they were at Shravasti, right? I'm sure you've seen Shravasti, or they were at Koshala, or so and so was doing this at Koshala, or they were at Varanasi or Rajgira, right? I mean, these are all the names that you see in the canon. They're all clustered right here around Shakya, and the Buddha traveled. Throughout the course of his life, I think down to this area as well, and there's a map of that somewhere too. But in any case, the major Brahmanical groups were located over in this area. The Brahmanical groups were spread out over this area, and the Shakyans, as far as we can tell, weren't directly under the control of a Brahmanical group. They were um, how to say they were considered to be under the kshatriya class because if you have them as part of, if you're a ruling class of another nation and this is one of your vassals or whatever, you classify them as X, Y, and Z. But in terms of their own culture, as far as we can tell, they didn't believe all that stuff. You know, it's a bit like, I don't know. Yeah, that's what the boss says. We have to say this about ourselves. And yeah, we supply them with military stuff. And so they call us Kshatriyans. But in terms of their own beliefs, they weren't Brahmanical. They weren't of that line of beliefs. And the Shakyans, as far as we can tell, based on what I've seen, and based upon what I've seen, oh, here's Terminator once again to save the day. So for the third time, John, I'm a doctor of philosophy, PhD, and part of studying religious studies and philosophy is you have to study the history of your subject. And my subject is Buddhism. Surprise. Oh man. Okay. So Shakya, here we are, right? Is here. And the Shakyans weren't under the direct control, they weren't under the direct purview, let's say, of Brahmanical culture at the time. So the Shakyans were basically sort of doing their own thing over here. And there were a lot of Shramana groups, a lot of these renunciate groups that were coming through Shakya, and there were competing philosophies, competing ideas. And the Shakyans themselves, once again, as far as we can tell, were sun worshippers, and that was their big thing. So yeah, and I mean it's kind of interesting. It's it's very interesting to look at what we the best we can do in reconstructing all of this. That's not to say that there weren't Brahmanical ideas and Vedic ideas that were popular, but to reconstruct those things back to the earliest possible versions we can is a big project, and it's a project that involves debates. It's not a clear-cut picture. And of course, at some point, we might discover archaeological evidence that moves the goalpost. I mean, that's just the nature of dealing with history. But in any case, yeah. I mean, for those of you who have never had it in your head as to sort of where all this stuff is, here you have the continent of India. Here you have the Himalayan mountains. There's Gandhara. For those of you who have heard, oh, he was blah blah blah, Gandhari, blah 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 blah. Remember, so the most recent, the big discovery recently in terms of really old Buddhist texts was Gandharan texts over here. We have very very old Gandharan texts, not too far, relatively speaking, from Shakya, right? Written in Gandhari. Anyways, so yeah, this is where the events of the Buddha's life took place. Was basically along this area and along here, along the foothills of uh, of the Himalayan mountains. Quite interesting indeed. Okay, but enough of that. Let's switch back over to sit and see time. Okay, so in terms of questions, meditation question. Patanjali. Oh, Patanjali is way after the Buddha. Patanjali is like 6th century common era or something, isn't he? Patanjali. Oh yeah, no, sorry. But yeah, no, he's 2nd century BCE. Panatanjali or Pantanjali. Yeah. Okay, so uh, yeah, the Yoga Sutras were well after the Buddha's time. This is one of those things where it's like, okay, if we're going to say that Hinduism existed at the time of the Buddha, but we didn't have the Yoga Sutras, and we didn't have the Mahabharata, and we didn't have 195 of the Upanishads, and we didn't have the other great epics, and we didn't have uh, there's a whole host of different canonical commentarial traditions that are now viewed as quite important in the Hindu tradition. All of these are coming way after the Buddha's time. The best number that I've been able to find is and by the way, now we say there are 4 Vedas, but all of the suttas, all the Pali suttas say there are 3 Vedas instead of 4. And some of the Vedic sources that are quite old say there are only 3 Vedas. And so then you're going, okay, well, we can triangulate from a few different angles that maybe there were only 3 Vedas at the time of the Buddha instead of 4. There were only 5 Upanishads at the time of Buddha instead of 100 or 200 Upanishads. None of the great epics were there because nobody mentions the Mahabharata. You'd think that would be pretty important for them to mention. Nobody mentions anywhere in the Buddhist canon any of the mainstay beliefs and deities of that we would associate with Hindu practice in any like really rich, significant form like we would find today. You find things like there's one passage where the Buddha is talking to some passing mendicants, and one of them says, "Oh, well, the people who believe the Upanishads who follow this tradition say this, and the Upanishads who follow that tradition say that. Which one is correct?" And the Buddha says, "Well, have any of your teachers seen these things for themselves? Do they know for themselves?" And these students say, "No, they don't. They know it from having heard it from someone." And he says, "Okay, well, is that sufficient?" And they go, "No, I don't think it is." But then here's the interesting bit, right? The stuff that they say is the content of those Upanishads isn't what we have today. So, same name, not the same content. And basically, what they say is, well, these Upanishads say that if you're a good person, the gods will let you into heaven. That's not a particularly profound position relative to what we Hindus understand of their own traditions today, right? So when you're looking for like this grand model of rebirth and all of this stuff, it's just not there. You find this in the Buddhist canon. You don't find it in any of the early Hindu sources, so-called Hindu sources. So again, these are important things to know. The view of self that we associate with Hinduism today, you don't find in the earliest Hindu sources. You can read it back into them, knowing what you know now with the later sources, but it's not explicitly there at all in the earlier sources. It's not there. Anyways, okay, back to meditation. So Bluey's asks, meditation question. Is there an ideal room for pointed concentration? Incense or no, soundproof, kind of quiet, decluttered, doesn't matter. Okay. If you were going to if you were going to try to do retreat and you're new to all of this and your mind is a mess, you want to give yourself every advantage possible to make progress. So, in terms of making progress, the biggest problem you have trying to pull your attention in to where you want it is that it gets pulled back out to other places you don't want it. So if there's a lot of noise, if there's a lot of smells, if there's a lot of taste, if there's a lot of tactile sensation, all of this is going to pull your attention off of the object you placed your mind on in the beginning, right? That's that's how it works. So I honestly not 100% sure how the incense thing got started as a support for meditation, unless your incense have like really powerful substances in them that make your mind calm, which some incense I think did in the past. uh, I don't know that they're a great support for your practice because the smell is powerful and it's pulling your mind out of the practice. Now, caveat to this might be maybe in the past you're sitting there with 400 other monks or something at the monastery and everyone has really strong body odor, or you're in a cave and the cave smells really badly of mildew and dead animals or something, right? Whatever the case may be, that maybe having a one aroma that is masking all the other potential aromas, once your mind gets sort of used to this one aroma that's there of the incense being there all the time, then your mind isn't stimulated by it anymore and it's easy to pull your mind into the practice. So, maybe things like this help. I mean, when you read the sources, they say, well, the incense purify the air. Okay, what do you really mean by purifying the air? It's not an air purifier. It's not pulling particles out of the air. It's not. So what it really means, I think, is that it's harder to smell other stuff if there's smelly things around. No, no. In the beginning, it's better. It's better because distraction is so powerful to be in an environment where you get some success really pulling the mind in and holding it where you put it because there's already enough distraction. And then once you get better at stronger at your practice, then you can start adding more difficulty. But life will add more difficulty without any problem because the kids will be yelling in the other room sometimes, or the guy next door will be mowing his lawn, or a car alarm will go off, or, you know, if you live it in the real world, there will be plenty of noises to distract you, plenty of smells because someone forgot to take the garbage out, plenty of whatever. And so also as you go forward in your practice and you're learning how to do your practice standing, you're learning how to do your practice walking, you're learning how to take the entirety of a sensory field as the object of concentration, this sort of thing, then increasingly you'll be able to deal with more and more and more difficult situations naturally. Because if my object of concentration is the visual field, then it doesn't matter what appears in the visual field. What matters is, can I keep my awareness on the visual field, right? Or is it getting pulled off to somewhere else? So it doesn't matter what appears here. If something nice appears here or something not nice appears here, it's the same in terms of me holding my attention on the entire, relative to what you watching me on the screen, holding my mind on the entire screen. Doesn't matter what appears on the screen. If my mind is on the screen, it's still, it's stable. If my mind is on the objects on the screen, then my mind can become pulled in and distracted and ruminate on, oh, look at this one. That one's interesting. Look at it go. Right? So once you have some ability to do foundation one, bringing the mind to the breath, foundation two, body scanning, especially you can do it seated in the beginning, but especially standing and then walking and then learning how to do the first type of aspect of Mahamudra, the way that I teach at least, doing 6 directions of the body, the tactile awareness, bringing that into more and more activities, then over time, again, you're learning how to bring more and more and more of your life into the practice. Okay. Yeah, basically, the thing is, by way of your analogy, let's say that, I don't know, let's say that 75 pounds or 100 pounds right now is your maximum, like is your one rep maximum. You want to bench like 90 pounds so that you can do like 3 or 4 reps and you're done, like absolutely done. So you want to put enough pressure, for example, in foundation 1, that when you get done with the session, it was probably difficult to do because you were really trying to bring your mind in and really trying to hold the mind there with great force. And if you do that properly, for most people, it will be very, very, very difficult because your mind is does not want to do that. Hmm. Your mind wants to run around to the senses. Your mind wants to generate a bunch of content. It doesn't want to just stay where you put it. So, yeah, it's basically powerlifting. You're not going for reps. And you're also not going for one lift max out. You're going for, you know, high intensity, short duration. Okay, if I do this weight, I can do 3 or 4 reps. That's it. I'm done after that. Likewise, you do 5 minutes of intensive breath. When you get done, you should be done. You know what I mean? You should need a little break because your mind worked hard during the session. Now, that will change, of course, right? Like as you get better, it'll get easier to do. So, Sammy asks about what the Buddha would have thought of pranayama. So, I think pranayama is a classical technique. I believe some type of pranayama is in the what is it? Mahasatipatthana Sutta, isn't it? Uh, oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Anapanasati, mindfulness of breath. Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. If you train in mindfulness of breath and you how do I say this? If you train in mindfulness of breath with a gentle technique and you're doing a lot of it, you're doing 6 hours, 8 hours a day, it will produce results because you're just not stirring your mind very much during in between, and it'll work. It's a fantastic technique, and you can go straight from that technique to something much more profound, like being aware of consciousness or whatever. Right? The trouble is that in real life, you stir your mind up over and over and over again in between sessions. So your mind is not calm when you sit down, and your mind is very much pulled out to all 5 of your senses when you sit down. I mean, raise your hand in the chat if you can place your mind on the breath and everything else in the universe disappears as soon as you place your mind there. You know, none of us can do that. Like when I go into retreat and I have really good sessions, I can do that. But from day to day, I can't do that. Sometimes if I sit down for an hour, I can do that. I can't do it in moments. So the idea that you can that how to say that you're going to generate this profound state of concentration without using any force while stirring your mind up repeatedly in between like a crack addict, you know, like violently stirring your mind up by running around your 5 senses all day and then stimulating it over here, depressing it over here, and then you're going to sit down and okay, just be mindful of your breath. Just come into your breath now. Be thankful of your breath. Love your mind. If it's really screwed up and won't do what you say, just be kind. Give me a break. There's no way in hell that's going to work. It's just it's just not. And this is why I think people aren't making very much progress with meditation in the modern world. And then they do that for a while and they go, well, this doesn't work. So I'm going to do, what is that? Like the music that's at particular volumes, or like pink noise or brown noise or green noise, or, oh yeah. And then I need to have this incense that has like all these herbs that makes the thing happen. And then, and everybody's doing all this stuff instead of just like, have you tried using a little more force? Your mind is coming at you with huge force of distraction. Have you tried just meeting that force with equal force? Because that works. And then once the mind is a little bit more under control, which doesn't take years, it takes weeks, weeks, over and over and over again. And now that I'm doing this basically full time and talking to hundreds of people now, over and over and over, people go, oh yeah, I've been meditating for years. Now I do this thing with the breath, and all of a sudden my practices are working. All of a sudden this is happening, that's happening. And I'm going, yeah, because you are doing the thing that is the first problem you have in meditation. You're fixing that. So everything else will become easier. If you just sit there and you're like, okay, I'm with my breath. Oh, there my mind goes. Better be nice to myself. You tried. Like, there's no way to overcome this problem of your mind running to the five senses, out completely wild and out of control, like a wild drunk elephant. you know, no way you're going to. Your homework for all of you, and I apologize because it's not going to be a comfortable assignment. But homework for all of you: look up elephant taming. Just look up the process of taming an elephant. The analogy that's used to describe trying to tame your mind, trying to gain control of your mind for the first time, is taming a wild elephant. Take a look at how horrific and violent and forceful taming a wild, unwilling elephant is. Highly intelligent, highly determined, huge, forceful body. And what they do is they tie a rope around their neck, they put a strong stake into the ground, tie it to the rope, and then they have a hook on the end of a pole, a sharp hook, and they put it into the soft parts so that if the elephant doesn't do what it's told, the elephant like has to pull away in pain, right? This is not a comfortable, relaxing, okay, just be nice to the elephant and the elephant will, no. The elephant is not going to do what you say because you're being nice to it. The elephant's not going to do what you say because you sat there for 7 hours just to try to be nice to it. It's going to trample you if it has a chance. If it has the opportunity, it's going to trample the crap out of you, and you're going to be dead. So that's the analogy that's used. And taming a wild animal is not a relaxing, comfortable, painless activity. It is full on. You have to use you what you do according to the classics is they say take a firm stake of intent, drive it into the ground, and tie your mind with the rope of mindfulness to the object of meditation, like taming a wild animal. So with extremely powerful intent, you drive your stake into the ground, and then you, with intense, powerful rope of mindfulness, you tie this wild thing up so it can't run away, and it will thrash violently against the rope and against the intent, and you have to hold it there. If it breaks the rope, you didn't you have no chance to tame it to do anything because it's now running around trying to trample all over things again. So if you really digest the analogies that are used in the canon, it makes a lot of sense out of the first few stages of meditation and why so many people aren't successful at the first few stages. Yeah, here's the other option. You take an animal, you confine a wild animal, and you confine them with very little stimulation for a long period of time, 2 or 3 days, and they slowly calm down until you can work with them over a long period. That works, right? So that's like the retreat approach where you say, okay, just relax, be calm. If your mind runs away, don't be too weird about it. Just gently bring it back again and again and again. Just gently bring it back. Why does that work? Because you're confining the animal in a low stimulation environment for 3 days. That's different than, okay, I need to tame this animal by the end of the day. I need, I need to make some progress with this wild beast by the end of the day, and I don't have 3 days to do it. And that's how it is in real life. So, foundation one, very powerful intention, very forceful mindfulness, which is this quality of remembering what you intended to do, by the way. That's not non judgmental awareness. You need to be extremely judgmental. You need to be extremely discerning about what's happening. And you're going to discern what's happening based upon your memory of here's what I'm supposed to be doing. I was told this in the past. Now I'm trying to do it. If you forget what you intended to do, you stop doing it. So mindfulness, sati, smrti, means to remember or to not forget. You recall the instructions and you remember what you intended to do in the present moment. By the way, it's also not non-judgmental, because if your mind, pardon my French, fucks off and starts doing something unrelated to the practice, you should judge that and go, that isn't right. This is wrong. Come back and do what I told you. And you should do this without getting angry, but nonetheless, you need to discern the situation properly and make a correction. Now, how does this tie into something like Zen practice, just sitting, the intention of no intention, doing, non doing? Here's the thing. If you can't get your mind calm enough to just keep it on your breath for a few seconds, you have zero chance, and I mean none, of getting your mind to do nothing. If you can't even make it slow down enough to stay where you put it, good luck having it zoom out and not engage in any objects that appear to it whatsoever in the normal way that it would engage. There's no way you're going to do that. You can't. You could do it if you isolate the animal, put them in retreat, and make them do it 10 hours a day, which is what some of the Zen, like Rinzai, this is how they train you. you know, we're going to do just sitting 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day. And just because we're not stirring the mind and we're going to just keep going until the mind runs out of thoughts, basically, you'll get there. And when you start having the right experiences, an experienced teacher will go, tell me what just happened. This happened. Yes, that's the right thing. Keep doing that. Do that next time. Okay. Welcome, Weird. Welcome, Jay. Okay. This may sound reductionistic, but to play along. If you had to choose between getting a healthy amount of sleep or longer quality meditation, which would you choose? Generally speaking, your meditation over the long run won't go as well if you don't get good sleep. So over the long run, it's better to try to get into the habit, and real life may not allow this from time to time, but it's better to get into the habit of having a routine that's relatively well established, sleeping, and I'm not a great example of this, but sleeping, yeah, as you say, 7, 8, 9 hours, whatever it is. The thing is, naturally, if you yeah, the blue Buddha example. Sorry. So naturally, if you start getting better at concentration, you may not need as much sleep. Also, as you get older, I think older people sometimes they need less sleep, between like 4 and 7 hours or something, depending on the person. So that might happen anyway, but if you train in concentration and your concentration gets quite good, you won't need as much sleep during the times where you're doing a lot of concentration practice. So if you were in retreat and you're doing 8 or 10 hours of concentration practice, you might, or more, you might not need to sleep as much because you're spending so much time in a state of concentration. It's replacing part of your need for sleep. But in terms of your ordinary life, if you're meditating a couple hours a day or whatever, and then you go to work or you're with your kids and you're doing real things, and you will probably be tired at the end of the day most days, and that's a good thing. And your practice will benefit from actually sleeping properly. Also, long run, super long run. The tantras have all sorts of practices that you can do while sleeping. So, very profound practices, in fact, you can do while asleep. So, sleep doesn't have to be wasted time. Taoism also has tons of practices related to what you do while asleep and cultivation practices you can do while sleeping. So, that time isn't just like dead time. If you get better at your practices, it becomes a 24-hour thing. You don't ever stop. You're going all the time. Remember when I had Neil Ripsky on and he said that one time his teacher came to him and was talking about breathing, and he said, basically, when you get good at your practice, you'll notice that your breath slows down. And they measured his breath while he was just working in his medicine shop, and he was breathing 2 times a minute. Yeah, that's impressive. Your mind needs to be pretty concentrated for your breath to get down to 2 breaths a minute. When I'm sort of in my best states of concentration, my breath gets down to between 1 and 2 times a minute at my best. So the fact that there's guys walking around where that's just how they breathe all day, you know, that's pretty impressive. But anyway, so over the long run, you're transforming everything that is part of the natural cycle of being a person into the path. So you don't have to give up all this stuff. Okay. Sammy, if I can stay on track with the breath in terms of numbers of breath, what should quality of the breath should I focus on? If you're able to do 5 minutes pretty consistently to Sammy, I would say go ahead and start working on foundation 2. So foundation 2, if you start doing the body scanning, you can do a lot of body scanning and not uh basically your system, once you get used to it, you can do a ton of body scanning and have it be beneficial. You can sit down and do an hour or two and have it be beneficial. In particular, if you're keeping the mind fresh, which is why I like to move up the body mostly. You can go down too. Moving down the body is good also. But if you move up the body and you stop at the head and hang out on the top of the head like I teach, you could do that 3 or 4 times, the 25-minute version, or you could break the body up into really small pieces. I've never done this with any of you guys, but you can break the body up into very small pieces where you're going, okay, here's the first portion of the tip of the finger. Here's the middle portion. Here's the third portion. Here's the knuckle. The first knuckle. Okay, here's the middle. Here's the first third of the middle knuckle, of the middle joint of this finger. Okay, here's the middle part. Here's the back part. Here's the joint. And you can move through in a very small, very, very small pieces. And you could do that moving up the body. The key is, if you're breaking the body up into a lot of pieces, the key is that you keep a relatively even pace as you go through, so that you're not spending a whole bunch of extra time on places that you like and avoiding places you don't like. And you want to make sure you're not analyzing what's there, because if you're analyzing what's there, that's a different type of meditation. You also want to make sure you're not modifying what's there, because modifying what's there is not the practice. If you're going to modify what's there, there are techniques for that. And those come over from, since you're doing the Lohan thing, Sammy, um, that would be a technique like Neigong, right? So Neigong, when in the Lohan set where you're releasing as you go down while you're standing, you first become aware of that area, right? So the mind moves in, let's say, to the neck. So the mind is aware of the tactile sensations of the neck. And you just place the mind first. And then you go release. And you ask that tissue that's like this to release and relax and to hang off the spine, right? And then if you're a little bit better, you ask the little muscles along the spine, release, and the small ones below that, release, small ones below that, release. So you're not just placing the mind in, you place the mind in, and then you ask the tissue that's there to do something, to open or to close, to contract or to release, whatever the case may be. And that's Neigong, internal skill. And then if your internal skills get good, you can send a wave, for example, through the body to whip out the hand, right? I don't know if that translates on camera, but you can send waves through the body. And that's how you would generate force, for example. If there was someone here, I could show you, but someone could press on my hand. And even though I'm sitting down on a chair with wheels, because I'm not depending upon hitting the floor to generate the force, I'm sending a wave through my structure. Then you can throw someone halfway across the room, right? Without, because you're generating release and a wave through the tissue to create the force, not bouncing off the ground or contracting and throwing them out or whatever. Anyways, of course, that's not the ultimate meaning or benefit of those practices. It's just something that you learn how to do for internal martial arts and whatever. But the benefit for your meditation is you're sitting there in meditation and this starts to hurt and you go, okay, I could just ignore it, but the pain is getting too much. You put the mind in there, okay, release. And it does. And it behaves itself. And then you go back to your practice, right? So gaining that skill of being able to release any part of the body that you feel and knowing how that part of the body is put together so that you can release what's there when pain or whatever occurs during a session, very useful skill to have, right? So this then would be the difference between just a scanning practice or 5 points where you place the mind in a point or several points and just hold the mind there. So that's just concentrated practice versus a neigong, an internal skill of doing something once you've placed the mind somewhere. Okay. Uh let's see. So what I'd recommend, Sammy, is do your intensive breath, and then you can do your neigongs and your body scanning. You can alternate those while you're doing your standing postures from heavy hands or lohan, and you don't have to double up. Just use the postures that you have from the lohan set, from the heavy hand set, and you can do your body scanning inside that with the pattern that I teach, moving upwards. And then once you get to the top, since you're at the top and Neil teaches a downward Negong skill, then you can learn how to release in a downward direction. Could also be helpful to learn how to release in an upward direction because those are two different Negongs. They're two different those are two different skills. Being able to send a wave down, right? Down the body versus sending a wave up the body. Those are different skills for what it's worth. That might be a lot. hopefully this is hopefully this is interesting to everyone. There are 18 people here, so I suppose it must be interesting. Okay. Yeah. If you're rarely losing track of the breath at this point, then use intensive breath just to pull the mind in really quickly for 2 minutes and then do the next set of practices. And if you find the mind is going nuts and not behaving itself, pull the mind back in for a minute or two and then go back to the practice. So use it as a tool when the mind is not behaving itself. It's interesting you had a guy that did internal martial arts in basic training. That's very interesting. Yeah, if at some point, Neil's probably going to be here for a bit in October, and I'll be going live a couple days, I think, while he'll be in town. If he's here, we'll do some stuff. Maybe on camera, we'll do some stuff just for fun, and I can show you guys some of this stuff. And he's obviously much better at it than I am. I watched Neil do this stuff. He just sent me a bunch of clips from his retreat, and it's just he's so good at it, you can't tell what he's doing anymore. It just looks like he's moving and the other guy moves. Like his internal skills are, I don't know how to describe it to you, but it just looks so natural when he does it because that's just how he moves when he moves. I have to do something. For him, that's just how it is. Uh, okay. Well, let's do a little bit of practice. Since we all gathered here together and we've been talking a lot about body scanning, let's do a body scan. We'll do a body scan in a seated position just for kicks. So, very briefly, just bring the mind to intensive breath. We'll only do it for a few breaths just to bring the mind in. 3, 2, 1, begin. Okay, bring the awareness to the feet, ankles, calves, knees, lower thighs, upper thighs, hips, front and back of the pelvis, and then squeeze the mind into the tailbone. Anus, perineum, and the sexual organ. Move up to the waist region, all the way around the body, above the hips but below the diaphragm region. And then same thing all the way around the body, the diaphragm region. So solar plexus down to the top of the waist. And then the chest. If you can, do not include the collarbones or the scapula, just the cavity of the chest. Now both of your shoulders, including scapula and collarbones, and the bicep region, elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, and the back of your hands, and your fingers. Now the lower third of your neck, middle third, upper third, the joint between your neck and your skull, and for the sake of time, just do your full skull except for the top. And then the top of the skull, Just relax your awareness. Don't place it anywhere in particular. Just take a seat in the theater of your mind and just sort of watch what your mind does as it returns to its normal condition. Okay. Very good. Very good. Jessamine, welcome. Welcome. You got here just in time. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. Just to remind you, if you haven't heard the word, we have podcast this weekend, 6:30. Sorry, 6 o'clock until about 9 o'clock, depending upon questions, with Justin Wall, otherwise known as Lama Karma, who did 2 3-year retreats and a 6-month retreat in the Tibetan tantric traditions. Quite an interesting fellow, living as a layperson now currently, and going to be having a lovely interview with him, I hope, and there'll be time for audience questions. Also, this class is now a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, so that I have a little bit more time for creating content, because that's been on the back burner while I've been doing this and getting Lohan going and all of that. And also, there's been quite a bit of demand for the open Q&As. So I'll probably be doing at least one Q&A per week now, either a Tuesday or a Thursday. And then that'll leave my Saturdays open at least once a month, I hope, to do a new episode of the podcast, since that's the time when most people are out and about. So you have the weekend off, unless you want to come to the podcast. Right. So that's about it for the day. Uh, Very glad to have you all here. Hope to see you again soon. Don't let anything change before I do. Okay. Cheers.